The other day, I made a video about the rise of the Mexican American population here in Arizona during my lifetime. I arrived here in 1951, and I talked a little bit about that, but I forgot to have my Espanol t-shirt on. So there it is. Hablo Espanol, and so forth, right? Yay. And not to put too fine a point on it, but pretty soon, just a few days, we have, if I can get it, Cinco de Mayo. Yay, Cinco de Mayo. It's a time in North America, well, Mexico is part of North America, the United States, to drink a lot of beer. In Mexico, this is not the big holiday. It's actually bigger in the United States than it is in Mexico. But anyway, I have another shirt on. This is my grandpa shirt. I'm wearing that because on Monday, day after tomorrow, my youngest grandson does his first jump. He has volunteered for airborne in the American Army, U.S. Army. And he's going to be jumping out of an airplane. Not usually a good idea, but some people have to do it. And my hope is that before he gets assigned to a hot spot, which, paratroopers usually, that's where they go. My son was in the 82nd Airborne. So we hope this mess that Trump started all on his own, and I'll definitely do a video on that. But I wanted to talk today about a history in this country. This is going to be a little loose because I have some notes, but I haven't really prepared the way I usually do. I want to point out something. Speaking of Hispanic heritage, look at the house behind me. If I can see, that design is called colonial. Not colonial back in Virginia, but colonial in Mexico. And that style of, we call it Southwest, but it's Mexican. It's Spanish Southwest, Spanish colonial. And if we look closely at the history of our country, we'll find we're very tied in to the entire Western Hemisphere, North and South America, and all points between. And I wanted to talk about the issue with ICE and genocide. And I may have to look at my notes to get the proper definition of genocide. But I want to talk a little bit about the history of what we have done in this country that has been, at times, indicative of genocide, but we'll have to define that. So, the goal of genocide is the destruction of a group by causing serious mental harm and inflicting conditions of life calculated to its physical destruction. In part or in whole. In part is important because often genocide doesn't kill everyone in the group. Also, it just says harm, mental harm. Depriving someone of their culture, depriving someone of their children is definitely mental harm. This is directed at a particular group. That's the geno, is the people, a particular people, a group of people, a demographic, if you will. What we're seeing with ICE is no one in their right mind, which excludes about a third of the country, would say that ICE is not all about getting the Mexicans out of the country. That's what MAGA voted for, right? Look at the things Trump said and so forth. Okay, so we're not going to argue that. But what we're going to look at is some of the things the United States has done in the past. In Arizona, talking about Arizona here. We had a practice that in my earliest times, I remember there were individuals, we use the term Native American. Canada says First Nations is what they call them. What I used to call Indians when I was a kid. And there were people who were very, very, very aware, had family members that they were aware of who had been taken as children, forcibly taken from their parents and sent off to boarding schools where, and here's the genocide, not just the taking away of the children, but culturally destroying their connection to their Native American culture. No Native American languages allowed to be spoken. No cultural attributes allowed in these schools. The idea was to make them into, what else can I say, middle-class white Americans. Now this was going on, of course, quite a long time ago. It stopped. But I will tell you that there was a place here in Phoenix called Indian School. There's an Indian School road still. And there was an Indian school there, one of those boarding schools. And I had a friend who had worked there, knew those people, and she took me. She was herself Navajo. She took me to a gathering, TGIF. And some of the teachers at the school, all white. She was the only non-white in the group. And the things they said about the kids, pretty disgusting. So that was a kind of cultural genocide. We saw another kind of cultural genocide when Donald Trump initiated the practice at the border in his first term of separating children, toddlers, little kids, babies from their parents at the border. Some of those kids have never, ever been returned to their parents. That fits the definition of genocide. Another thing, we have to go overseas for this. What's happening in Gaza? This is extremely, and it shouldn't be, but it is controversial because there are many people that label you anti-Semitic, which is another terrible bigotry that has been around for several thousand years, by the way, culminating, we might say, in the Holocaust. But there are people who feel that if you criticize what Israel is doing in Gaza, which is killing thousands of people who had no part in the attack on Israel on October 7th, a couple of years ago, they will say that you're being anti-Semitic. That's ridiculous. We're criticizing a nation, a country, that is practicing genocide, clearly. I think that we have to look at the fact that another thing, this gets closer to home, is there a plan? Is there a government plan to destroy a people and their identity in some form or another? It doesn't have to be shooting them in the head. It can be throwing them off their land, which we did to Native Americans. That was genocide. We did that. But you also have the government plan called Project 2025. I have read a good part of it, not the big 900-page one, no. A summary of it, shall we say. A couple of summaries. And the plan clearly is to turn this country into what they hope will, they say, the real America. We say a white ethno-state, a nation defined by a particular ethnic or racial group. Those are the only real members of that group. That's what Project 2025 is aimed for. Whether you define it along lines of race, ethnicity, religion, skin color, whatever, it's still an attempt to, number one, define who belongs, and the other side of that, expel those who don't belong. That's also genocide, since a great number of those people are Americans, many of them American citizens. We've seen 2 American citizens murdered by ICE. This is ICE's plan. Okay, that's why they're there. Now, I have a whole other thing. I'm going to talk about ICE and their relationship to Donald Trump. But for now, I think I will stop and take a quick look at my notes to make sure I did. Oh, I have another. I think I'll make a second one. The United States refused to participate in a number of international treaties because it would interfere, back in the 20s and the 30s and so forth, with racial segregation. Southern senators would not permit us to join certain international organizations. And this was particularly true right after World War II, when the United Nations developed a charter on genocide. And those Southern white senators saw very clearly that their establishment of racial segregation in the South would qualify as genocide. So they fought everything. And I have some detail on that. So I will get back to you fairly soon. Thank you.